What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
What's the tech?
Welcome everybody to What the Tech. I am your host, Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by the original gangster himself, Paul Thurrott.
I feel
the
so
OG.
inadequate.
You're the OG in your mansion right now with a beautiful painting behind you.
In my Bond villain lair.
It does look like a Bond villain lair. What's on the wall? Is that wallpaper?
It's a painting. Oh yeah, the design pattern.
Yeah,
in the
the
back.
3D wall you have behind
It does
you.
look like it looks like it's probably like brushed aluminum or something, but I believe it's just wallpaper. Yeah, it's just.
That's some layout you have there.
Yep. That wall is actually like 30 feet behind me. This room is unbelievably huge.
So you're actually in Vegas right now. You're not
Yes.
in. You didn't redo your entire house
No.
to look like a Bond
Right.
villain's lair.
Yeah, exactly.
You've
No,
actually
Mr. Bond.
you're actually in Vegas. I don't know what you're in Vegas for, so I don't know if you want to say or not.
My company does trade shows, and we're having one this week called Connections. So it's actually for a bunch of things, but Windows is the one I'm at. So I think it's Windows, Exchange, SQL Server, some other things, perhaps Dev Connections, maybe.
Very cool. Well, you travel a lot, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when you started, you said, like, listen, this year it's going to be a little nutty. I'm going to have a lot of places to go. And you've been really traveling. I mean, almost once a month you've been somewhere.
Sure.
You don't like it.
No.
You're not a fan of this.
Well, I don't know. It depends. You know what it is? My schedule is very full, and anything can tip that, you know. So I'm working on the book right now, which is awful and is literally a nightmare. And that alone, like, just pushes me right over the edge. So having to travel in the middle of this as well is the worst. I can't wait for the book to be done, because this kind of travel won't be a problem, you know, in May or June or something.
Yeah.
But in March, April, it's just
When do you anticipate that the book is going to be finished?
Well, the primary writing part, the part that's awful, is going to end at the end of April, so like May 1st.
Okay. So you're almost done.
We're still going to work on it after that, of course. I mean, they'll make changes, and we'll have to change the book, but the awful part of it, you know, the actual.
Now, you've written a bunch of these. I mean, you've done it for a couple of years.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I never got good at it.
you never got good at it. Still working my way up to it. But have you ever, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but have you, like, thought the book was completed and then they changed something drastic?
Oh, drastic. Well, no. I mean, one of the problems we had was with the Windows Vista book,
It was actually
kinda
Windows. You started writing it a little too early, and it was Windows Longhorn.
Well, yeah, actually, there's a story around that too. But we finished the book, sent it off to the publisher, and then one of the very last things Microsoft did with Windows Vista was they changed all the icons, and so our book went to press with the icons that were there from before. So they started these glass style icons for a lot of the applications that we didn't have in the first edition, you know, because they changed it at the last minute, and that really bothered me, because the people who, well, aside from the obvious reasons, I mean, the people who knew this was coming at Microsoft were good friends of mine, could have and should have tipped me off. And so, you know, when Windows 7 came down the pike, I made a point of talking to Steven Sinofsky and saying, seriously, is anything changing? Because I need to.
I need to write a book, man.
Well, no, he was very good about it. He gave me a couple of small details, none of which impact the book. So
Excellent.
good.
So, I mean, it has to be a very difficult thing to write a book. I can't imagine. I have difficulty sending out an email. I send out a mass email, and instead of writing personally, I wrote personal.
Yeah.
I think you got the email too yesterday. You got that typo email. And I look at it, I'm like, oh, I'm awful at this. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, people who communicate for a living, you would sort of assume we'd be good at this stuff.
No, I actually think you become worse.
Yeah.
Because you send out so many emails and so many, messages back and forth where you just don't care after a while.
Right.
So this is Book Talk with Andrew and Paul. We do not discuss technology on the show.
Well, it's a book about technology.
It's a book about technology. I actually, that kind of leads me into something. We have a couple topics. We don't run down the tech news per se of the week, but what we do, we discuss certain key stories and events that are happening, and we make a discussion around it. This is what this show is about. It's What the Tech. That's what I say every day when I walk into this room. There was a big Windows thing that happened, big controversy surrounding smoked by Windows.
Yeah, Windows Phone.
Windows Phone.
Yep.
I want to go into this. So apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have these strange events in the Microsoft stores where they tell you to do something and they try to see if you could beat Windows Phone with your phone. And most of the time people fail.
Accomplishing some random task.
So let's say it would be, I don't know, maybe like open up an email and set right to something. So,
show a calendar entry or what.
Yeah. So I guess some of these tasks that they know they're going to win at. It's not totally random.
Microsoft does.
does.
Well, actually, I would put it a different way. Microsoft knows they're going to win almost every single time because they've done this a lot, and they actually know that Windows Phone is more efficient than these other phones. You know, so that even if you know exactly where icons are on your home screen or whatever, that as it turns, it's obviously tilted in their favor. I mean,
sure.
There are certain things that Windows Phone just does really well.
Yeah, and they're setting up the event. I mean, it's not like a third party that's doing it. They know that Windows does this pretty well, and the odds are that they're going to win. So they had one last week where it was, pull up the weather in two separate cities.
Right,
and this guy on the screen at the same time. And this guy happened to have his Android, which had two widgets with two separate cities or two separate countries. I forgot what exactly it was on his screen. So he turned the phone on. And he's like, here you go.
What do they call them? Gadgets or widgets?
Widgets.
So he had these things on his home screen.
Yeah.
Right. Which is fairly random to happen to have something like that, but whatever.
And he pulled it up. He goes, here we go. I win. And Microsoft turned around.
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that, right? So the thing is your phone has to start from a dead stop. So it has to be off. So he also configured his phone in a very strange way, by the way. I mean, I understand that there are people who don't put a password on their phone or a PIN. Mm-hmm. Those people are idiots, by the way. I just want to be very clear about that. There's no middle ground on that.
By the way, I am one of those idiots.
Yeah, sorry
no
about
password,
that,
nothing.
Okay, you understand when you lose your phone in a cab or a subway or whatever that that thing is a bucket of personal information. I mean, it's really dangerous. But,
luckily for me, Paul, I don't leave this house.
All right, be that as it may, that's one thing. So, but I guess what I'm saying is I understand and accept, although I do not approve of the fact that people don't put a PIN on their phone, but I think we all understand people do that. This guy actually went in and found some configuration thing in Android where it doesn't even go to the lock screen at all.
It just goes directly. It just starts.
It just goes right to the home screen somehow. So I guess there's an interface for that somewhere in Android. That's bizarre. That's just unusual. So this guy won by virtue of the fact that he coincidentally had these exact two icons on his desktop or his home screen and had configured this phone in a way that was just really strange. I mean, I'm sure the Microsoft guys aren't putting pins on the phone they're using for the contest, but there's a lock screen. I mean, it's just weird. So he actually won by like a second. I mean, he only beat them even configured exactly for the rules of the contest. He kind of just barely beat them,
but apparently they turned to him and at first they said, no, you didn't win. And they contacted him via Twitter and said, okay, listen, we're going to give you a laptop and a phone.
Yeah, so to put right, so I guess to frame the story, Microsoft created this campaign. It's not an ad campaign they have on TV, but they do videos they put on YouTube. There's a web campaign around this. They're doing it in stores, which is where this happened in a Microsoft retail store. They do it at trade shows and at conventions. They did it at South by Southwest, for example. So the guy who does this is a guy named Ben Rudolph, the PC guy at Microsoft. He's he's in all these videos, or he's not in all the videos now because now they're doing them in a lot of different places, but he started them. So the people that did this to him, or the employees in the store were people who worked locally in whatever store that was, right? They weren't Microsoft executives or anything. It was just guys at a store, and they did treat the guy pretty shabbily. I think he said, "Look, I won," and they're like, "No, you didn't," and he said, "Why?" And they said, "Just because." And then they made him take a picture that went in the loser box. Like here's another guy who lost to Windows Phone, which was kind of a terrible thing to do to him. So Ben Rudolph, the guy who started this campaign, contacted him and said, "We'll give you the laptop you would have won if you had won the thing. If which is what he was supposed to win, right? That
Yeah.
was the point of the contest, as well as a free phone."
So they said that you could either get, if you beat the Windows Phone, you could either get the Windows Phone that you beat or a laptop. Why would you take the phone over the laptop?
Well, I think for this particular, I don't think they usually have the laptop. I think this is a special promotion that was tied into the Hunger Games. I
Okay.
think it was a special Hunger Games edition laptop of some
Okay.
kind.
Okay.
And I think that's why the guy won. The guy, this isn't just some random guy who's saying, "Hey, Microsoft, rip me off." I mean, he's actually a tech blogger,
Okay.
which kind of puts another little bit of nuance on top of it, I think. And he went down there specifically because he had heard that they were doing this contest. He wasn't shopping in the mall with his girlfriend and got
Just,
ripped off randomly by Microsoft. I mean,
I mean, maybe the conspiracy is that maybe he had a heads up on what what the contest
yeah.
was. I mean, listen, who knows if that's true?
I'm not saying he's cheating per se. It's more along the lines of, I mean, this contest is tilted the way it's tilted. I mean, I think that's obvious, but I think I would say he was just lucky,
Sure.
And that the important thing I would also point out is that I really do feel like Windows Phone is more efficient at a lot of the common tasks that people do, and that's the point of this, and that this guy kind of gaming the system a little bit or just lucking into a victory doesn't change the fact that Windows Phone has won like 97% of the times that they've done this contest, and for a reason, and not just because it's tilted in that direction, but because it really is more efficient at common tasks.
No, listen, I actually, this actually goes into the next story that, and this was going to be a major focus of the discussion, and I really want your opinion on this. The Nokia Lumia 900, they announced it's going to be selling for $100, $99 here in the States.
Yep.
And I have already heard, and it's bizarre that I'm hearing this, that people are saying that this device is too cheap, it's too inexpensive, and it's not going to sell well because people in this country perceive $99 phones as lower end or mid range phones.
We're so messed up.
Isn't that the nuttiest thing?
How dumb is this?
Isn't that one of the most nuttiest things you could imagine? People are complaining about. They're complaining that this high-end phone is
right.
a low-end phone.
3 months ago, the complaint would have been, how could you justify selling a Windows Phone for $399 when an iPhone costs $399 and or whatever the price is, and they don't have all the apps and blah 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 blah. They should sell that thing for cheaper. It's like you're not going to make anyone happy here. I don't have one in hand. I will be getting one. I can tell you that based on the conversations I've had with Microsoft recently, with other people who have seen this phone, that it is very much a high-end phone. I routinely hear from
but it's
people at
$100,
AT&T.
Paul. It's $100. I think the argument is that HTC is putting out a phone for $200, and people will because we're and you know what, it does have a kind of
honestly though, if you went into the store and you put both these devices in your hand,
you would know.
You would come away knowing that the Lumia 900 was the really nice one.
But do you think the average consumer kind of understands that, or do they look at the pricing and they go, "Well, this is $199, so that automatically means that it's better"?
So the phone that I use now is a Samsung Focus S, which is Windows Phone device. I think it's based on the Galaxy 2S. I think it's the same kind of phone. It's a very generic looking plastic, big screen smartphone, right? I think most Android phones kind of look like the same thing. They're just kind of generic looking. I mean, one of the things that the iPhone has going for it is that it has a very unique design. It's beautiful to look at. It feels good in the hand, yada, yada, yada. And I think that this is what the Lumia 900 gives Windows Phone, is a phone like that. I think that if you were sitting at a table in a bar with a bunch of your friends or at a restaurant or whatever, and everyone's phone was out of the table, people are naturally going to graduate. People are naturally going to look at that phone.
Sure,
and
yeah.
That's the one they're going to focus on because they're beautiful.
No,
I've seen an 800. I mean, it's the same materials and so forth. This is really nice.
As far as I don't remember offhand. As far as like the the size of the phone compared to the 800? How much of a difference was it?
So there's a couple of differences. The size is bigger. I don't remember the exact measurements of the screen, but the Lumia 800 is more of an iPhone style. It's a little bigger than the iPhone screen,
Hmm.
if I recall correctly, but it's on the smaller side. Whereas the Lumia 900 has a much bigger screen, like 4 points, whatever it is, 4.3 inches, or it's a bigger screen. The kind of polycarbonate, casing that the devices are made out of is identical. They have the same colors and everything. The 800 has kind of a cool effect where the front of the glass, the front of it, the glass part, actually curves with the device.
With the device, yeah.
Yeah, because it's small, but the Lumia 900 is big enough that they can't really do that, so it kind of sits on top of it as it would normally.
So, but
Uh,
are they going to now a couple at launch? How many different colors is it going to launch in? Just one?
I believe on launch day, it will be two colors, black and that cyan blue color, and
Okay.
then on the 22nd, which is I think 2 weeks later, they'll have the white version.
Okay, so they're gonna have both of them. I kind of like it. I mean, and this is a smart move for AT&T and Nokia because I could see people buying this phone as a secondary phone, or if they're just even if they're under contract with another provider, and a lot of enthusiasts might go and buy this for $99.
Yeah, and helping matters, and this is where the people who write me, emails on the side are very helpful. And I've heard over the past year or so from various people who work for AT&T. So you hear different things about devices that are coming down the pike, and when they get them in, and yada yada yada. And the stuff that I've heard around the Lumia 900 is amazingly positive. Everyone there loves this phone, and it's something that has never happened with any Windows phone before,
And
where these people are like literally just drooling over it, and they
And by
want
the
it for
way,
themselves.
it's going to drop in price also. I mean, this is just the
Yeah,
this is the I mean,
sure, sure.
people are complaining it's cheap. I mean, this is going to be a
Yep.
very inexpensive phone, and this is going to really elevate
So
the brand in the market.
yeah,
I mean, in my
unfortunately,
opinion, I could be wrong.
yeah, but it's unfortunately with Windows Phone, there's always another edge of the sword, and there's a controversy going on with Windows Phone right now around software updates and how the carriers are blocking those updates from getting out. And actually, one of the carriers that's the worst about doing that is AT&T, and AT&T is going to be the company that's selling the Lumia 900. So there are two questions that people might have for the future with regards to this phone on AT&T, and one is just normal software updates. I mean, will AT&T update the phone over time as those updates appear? And then let's not forget there's a major new version of Windows Phone coming down the pike,
Sure.
the fourth quarter of this year, Windows Phone 8, completely different operating system. It could technically run on the current generation devices, but will Microsoft make it available? And if they do, will any of the wireless carriers allow users to upgrade to Windows Phone 8? I can't imagine them doing it.
No,
Even if
because they
AT&T had been the greatest company on earth about supplying updates, I think you could make a really good case for Windows Phone 8 where they just don't do it.
yeah, I
So
don't know.
think about it. It's April, right? So
Couple
if
months.
yeah, like 6 months, literally 6 months from now, Windows Phone 8 will be out, along with new devices, which, by the way, will have dual core processors.
But do people
Will have
know this?
expandable memory.
See,
Mhm.
I think it's and here's the other side of the argument. I think this phone could sell really well because a lot of people are not really aware when
Yeah,
Microsoft will be releasing a new Windows phone. I think with Apple it's a little different because we're kind of accustomed to realizing that on this time of the year there's going to be a new phone, so I'll hold out. I won't get it.
sure.
I don't think people realize that with
Yeah, yeah.
Apple,
No,
with
that's fair.
Microsoft.
That's fair. And we come at this thing from sort of a techie perspective. I mean, for the average human being, most people, Windows Phone today doesn't get immediately obviated because a new version's out. I mean, it doesn't stop working. It's still as good as it ever was. And Windows Phone, the OS, at least the current version, we'll see with Windows Phone 8, but the current versions of Windows Phone are very efficient. These devices, the Nokia Lumia 900 included, are single core devices where the rest of the smartphone industry has kind of moved forward to multi-core. Um, Windows Phone today does not benefit from multi-cores.
But yeah, but
So,
Windows Phone today is extremely efficient with the
right,
single
it's
core.
incredibly fast. In fact, no one
Yeah.
will ever pick this phone up and think, "Wow, this thing's really lagging." It's really fast. Windows Phone screams on a single core phone. It works great.
I like this phone a lot, Paul. I
I do
do.
too.
I think the design, it's really, well, we knew this with Nokia. Nokia makes some pretty phones, and we knew that this was going to be a really good phone. Now, the camera, I've seen some screenshots of what the camera could do. Is it that impressive? I mean, are we to be blown away by it?
It's hard to say. So yeah, so we keep waiting for that one phone. I think there's going to be an interesting shootout to be had on the Windows Phone side between this phone, which has an 8 megapixel Carl Zeiss lens, et cetera, and the HTC Titan 2, which is shipping on the same day on AT&T
For $200.
for $200.
Yeah.
That one has a 16 megapixel camera. That's I don't know if that's a first on a smartphone, but if it isn't, it's close to being first. And it's impressive no matter how you look at it. Megapixels don't equate to quality. Everybody knows that, I hope. But my understanding, without having actually taken pictures with it, is that the camera quality between these two devices is going to be very close. And so that's something I'm going to pay a lot of attention to. But that said, I'm still getting the Lumia 900 because I just think the total package is there. I like the whole... I like all of it. I like the way the device looks and feels and all that stuff.
Well, but it's still not an iPhone equivalent as far as the camera goes.
I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, I think I would have to say for smartphones that the iPhone sets the bar. They've set the standard.
Yeah.
The iPhone 4S is not quite good enough to replace a digital SLR or digital, snap, point and snap,
Point and
whatever.
shoot.
Yeah,
I think for many people,
it's close.
It's close. I think for many people, it has somewhat replaced it, but for the enthusiasts, definitely not. But we are getting there.
You can get lenses for it, right? They have those attachments you can get, which is sort of unique.
You can put a crappy ancient filter on it and make the picture worse. That's what everybody's doing now. You could do Instagram and just get a crappy, filter on there. You can make it look like it was taken 100 years ago. In the chat room, somebody has a question. They said, can you ask Paul if he knows if the Nokia apps they pre-install can be removed, and if they replace the default apps like Nokia's Maps and Music?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of that. I don't have a Nokia device yet, so it's hard to say. I can tell you how it works on other Windows phones. So, for example, when you buy like the phone I have, it comes with AT&T apps and also apps from Samsung, and those can be removed. But because Nokia has such a special relationship with Microsoft, I could see that going the other way.
Yeah, because Nokia also has the ability to kind of customize it too, right?
Yeah, and then with regards to the Maps app in particular, where Windows Phone ships with an app that does the same thing, whether both are available.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. I'm sorry.
I do want to continue this discussion, but before we do, I want to talk about our sponsor, Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com. You get 10% off your entire purchase, and this is why you should go to Hover. I've been using Hover for about 2 years now, and I've transferred every one of my domain names from those other guys, which everybody knows who they are, to Hover. And the reason why I did that is because with Hover, there's no upsell. They're not trying to scare you into getting certified domains and charging you an arm and a leg for private registration, which, by the way, with Hover, totally free in the price, so you don't have to pay $11. They're not charging you for business registration, which could be another $10. So by the time that you're done with these domains at those other guys, it's about $30. With Hover, it's one flat fee, no extra charges, no scare tactics into buying extra services. They offer webmail as well. You could get a custom address for your mail, and you could do it through Hover. They have a great interface over there. Also, if you want to transfer your domains, you could call up Hover. They have a free concierge service. They do all the work for you. You just pay for that 1 year of registration, which is $10 for that transferred domain name. They do all the other work for you. Go to gfq.hover.com. You get 10% off your entire purchase, or you could use promo code WTT upon checkout for What the Tech. WTT upon checkout. Thank you, Hover. You smirk every time I do a live read.
You're good at it.
Is it because I get into this? And back to you, Paul. And now, Paul with the weather. No, but back to the Lumia. I am very interested in this phone, and for all the people that today the bloggers were going wild over the last, I think yesterday too, of this device is too cheap and people are going to buy because they're going to perceive it as inexpensive. I think we think like this. I think the hardcore enthusiast goes into a store and says, well, I'm not going to buy this because it's $100. most people go in there and say, I'm going to buy this because it is $100.
Well, because of the choices I have for phones that cost $100, look at this thing. How did this one end up in this pile of phones? I mean, I think people are going to be impressed with it when they see it.
I think it's
in
nutty
person.
that we're having this discussion, but I kind of wanted to hit on this because our perception of products has totally shifted. And it's
Right.
almost like we're conditioned to spend more because we look at things and we're like, well, this is $100 and that's $125. I'm going to buy the $25 one. I think that's what happens.
I don't know enough about this to write an article about it, but I know that there's a psychology to purchasing where the upsell is very popular because people perceive the value in it, whether it's real or not. It's
Yeah.
the reason that Microsoft sells many different versions of Office and Windows. It is the exact reason, because testing shows that when you offer people a premium version of a product at an additional cost, they go for it,
Yeah.
and you can make a lot of money. That's where you make the money, right? Because if you think about like developing Windows, any version of Windows, you've developed the version of Windows, and then you kind of cut it up into different products, right? Different product versions. The low end one didn't have any less engineering that went into it. You just cut products out of it. The products were still made; they just weren't included in there. The one that has a couple of extra things, you make a lot more money on that because, that's where you make the money. It's probably true of cars. It's probably true of almost anything. And yeah, that's why Apple. I think it's part of the psychology behind the whole Apple phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, listen, the Apple phenomenon is its own separate thing.
Sure.
It's a bizarre little bubble that exploded to the mainstream, and everybody buys it because it's Apple, and they don't really care at this point.
Yeah.
I was another topic that I wanted to get to was something that you wanted to talk about, and that's the morning after effect when it comes to these products. We're discussing this phone now, and what we hope to see with it, and the iPad came out last week, and everybody got it, and everybody raved about it, how great it is, and it's worth getting. And now, the following couple days and the following weeks, we start seeing all these bugs that are coming out. And the interesting is, how come we don't see it immediately? We don't hear about it.
Well, and this is not an attempt to bust on Apple. This happens with everything. In fact, I can trace this back in my own life to when I was a kid. There's a moment in life for everyone where you go from being a child to being sort of an adult. And when you're a child, you play with toys. And as you get older, hopefully you don't. Although I'm sure people right now are furiously typing and explaining how that's true of them as adults as well. But in my case, I grew up with like Star Wars action figures and little Star Wars space vehicles and like a $6 million man, thing. And I remember eagerly awaiting some Christmas or birthday present that I knew I was going to get. One of those types of things. And as the weeks went by and the anticipation grew, I finally got it, and then I was like, the anticipation was the exciting part. And I'd kind of outgrown that kind of a toy. Like I was probably 12, 13, whatever age.
Yeah, like the following day, you've outgrown it.
Yeah. I discovered girls or something, and I moved on. So I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the psychology of it. And just because I write reviews, I've always envisioned but never done this notion where I would write a review and then revisit it weeks later. And I for some reason, I think of this thing as 28 Days Later, which is the title of a horror movie, which maybe plays into this too. It's kind of hard to say, but the point being that, I review something and I give my off the cuff remarks about it, whether they're positive or negative or whatever. But then, that maybe that's based on a week or 2 weeks of usage or whatever it is. But then some number of weeks down the road or months or whatever, other things reveal themselves and you change your mind a little bit,
And I think it works in the opposite way too. I think a lot of people hate something when it comes out and they start using it and they go, well, you know what? That's not that bad.
Right.
I don't hate it because I had whatever reason. I hate it because it's new and it's different.
Yeah. Sure. Some people hate things before they even see them. I mean, I derided the original iPad because it was a giant iPod Touch.
I think many people did.
Hmm?
Many people did.
Yeah, right. I wasn't alone. I mean, but the point is, you use it for a while, and you're like, okay, so it is a giant iPod Touch, but because of the giant screen, actually, this thing is better at doing a bunch of other things, and that's actually valuable, as it turns out. And you kind of your stance on that thing softens. Apple products are particularly interesting to discuss in this vein because people tend to be over the top in their praise of them. In fact, in some annoying cases, you can read reviews where these guys were writing lines in a review specifically so they could see their words in print at an Apple event later where, they got quoted because they were using like these Apple PR friendly terms. It really is resolutionary,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But, with the new iPad in particular, I mean, the one thing I guess the key takeaway after using this thing now for however long it's been out, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is, it works great, right? It's, the iPad's always been great. It's a little thicker, it's a little heavier,
But I mean,
battery life
is it that much of a difference that you're going to say, wow, you know what, this is heavier and thicker? Do you get that perception like this is kind of a step backwards for the device, or you're thinking, well, I'm getting so much more?
It's only notable because Apple has always championed thinner, lighter, thinner, lighter, thinner, lighter, thinner, lighter. And they don't often step back from that. I mean, it was interesting. It's interesting to me that this thing has to be thicker and heavier to accommodate a much bigger battery, which is hopefully overcomes the various reasons why this thing is draining.
It's twice the energy of the previous one, right? Twice the amount.
Yeah. It also raises an interesting issue for the future where you got to wonder, like, what can they do to this next? They're not going to double the resolution again. They're not going to, I don't know what, I don't know how Apple follows this one up exactly. But
thinner, lighter.
Thinner. Okay, fair enough. So the iPad is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, I'm sorry, there are plenty of things wrong with it, but it's great. I mean, it's not perfect. A lot of people tend to overuse terms like that. They really nailed it. This one's perfect. No, not exactly. There's a laundry list of issues that people have had with it, and the types of things that come up after people actually get to use the device, right? I mean, Apple has a very decided event marketing approach that they have. They don't let a lot of people into their inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out as a big surprise. That's the excitement. But then people actually start using it, and anytime a huge group of people uses any product, software, hardware, whatever, all of a sudden that's when the problems crop up. So there's been a bunch of that stuff in the wake of the iPad release, and it's not as devastating to the device as, say, some of the things that have happened in the past. For example, the iPhone 4 had a horrific number of hardware issues, including most famously or infamously that antenna on the outside where you could have talked to like hardware designers anywhere who would have said, oh yeah, we stopped doing that in the 1970s because of attenuation. We know all about that. Whereas Apple was like, design, it's going to be beautiful first.
But look how pretty it looks. You don't need to make a phone call.
Yeah. And, Apple's special because people still applaud them for it. And people still buy millions of the devices. It didn't impact the device in a negative way at all. But, realistically speaking, these things are still issues, and in some cases serious issues.
I'll give you an example with my Galaxy Nexus. When I first got it, I really liked the phone, and it was quick, and everything seemed to work. But much like every other Android phone, after having it for about a month, you start realizing what you don't like about it.
Right.
And it's still buggy to me. Like it's such a step up from the previous version and from Froyo and from Gingerbread. It's such a I mean, it's a huge leap, but there's still certain things that I do with this, and I just don't understand why it doesn't work. I'll have basic system files just crashing on me. Just crashing. I mean, simple tasks that I'm doing just crash constantly. And it seems to be a problem with Android. It just seems that it's not tight enough. Just not there yet.
Android. I just don't like it. I mean,
you know what? I don't dislike Android. I like that we have an option. I don't like some of the things that they're doing.
Theoretically, I like the idea of Android, but realistically, Android to me fails for the same reason that Linux failed. It's just, and I don't mean fail like numbers sold. Obviously, it's been fantastically successful. I mean, I just don't like it. Yeah. It's not enjoyable to use.
I'm telling you, Linux in 2013, there's going to be a huge surge in 2013. People are going to jump ship.
It's going to be because they stopped letting engineers design user interfaces.
Yeah.
Apple's products tend to be designed first, and then everything else comes later. Google's products tend to be engineering comes first. You can tell that it's designed by scientists and mathematicians. I mean, they're terrible.
I'm just curious on when this phone gets shipped, right? I mean, right now, Windows Phone, beautiful UI. The iPhone's still the number one phone to get. If anybody asks me what phone they should get, I always tell them the iPhone because it's simple, it's easy, it's clean, and you know what you're doing on there. With Android, I really wonder, like, the average person that goes and buys this phone. I'm not talking about someone that really wants Android. I'm saying someone that goes and buys this phone. I wonder what their experience is like. and why they keep buying this
You know
phone.
what? People amaze me. Uh, we had dinner over the weekend with some friends, and one of the guys' wives was talking about how her computer was broken, and it's like a 4 or 5 year old HP. It has Windows Vista on it, and she had done like a PC restore one time, so she actually went through this process, knows how it works. Um, Backed up her data. She knew all these weird technical issues about computers, which I just shudder at. It's terrible that anyone should have to know that stuff. I think there's a lot of people who are kind of average consumers that just sort of assume, well, this is what computing is, so I
Yeah.
just have to know the stuff. If I want to use a computer, I have to be good at this. And I think they look at Android as the same thing. I think that's in some ways that's part of it. It's like it has all the benefits of the PC, but in the mobile space, lots of apps and lots of choices for hardware and different price points and everything. But it also has all of the stupid problems that make this kind of device really kind of suck, compared to say a very clean, simple Apple device, like an
Yeah.
iPad or an iPhone, depending on which market.
No, yeah,
I
actually, you're
just,
right. You're absolutely right. But I wonder, a lot of people, the way they perceive these devices, they love a device, and then they start realizing these problems. Do they feel like they still have to love the device, and they have to say that they love the
well,
device? Because I've done a couple of these reviews, and
yeah,
whatever. Let's say I was talking about my phone, and
yep.
I did a review, and then I turned around and I did another like a secondary thing, and I said, I don't like this and I don't like that about the phone. And nearly every review that I've done, people have said, You're an idiot for not liking it. Why are you complaining about the phone that you just bought?
Well, they'll say 2 weeks ago you
2
said
weeks
that
ago,
this thing was blah blah
or
blah blah
that, yeah,
blah.
or I'll get
blah.
2 weeks ago you said
Yeah,
that you like this
yeah,
feature,
yep.
and I wonder if
Uh,
that's because people
it
feel
it
that they
depends on
need
what
to
you're
stick
talking
to it.
about.
Okay.
Right? I mean, people have big parts of their psychology tied up into some of these devices, particularly Apple devices. I keep telling it's amazing to me that anyone would argue otherwise. But the iPad is very expensive. It's expensive. Um, it's very expensive. It just is. I'm sorry. It's something that is designed to be bought and replaced a year or two from now at most. It is designed for that purpose, and yet it still costs 6, 7, $800. And they're expensive. It's for most people. It's an expense.
Yeah.
And I think when you spend money on something, it doesn't have to be an Apple product, but Apple products are great examples because they are expensive. Yeah, you feel you have to justify that purchase. Um, that woman actually that I this is a takeoff of a conversation I had with someone else on a plane one time, but she was saying, she's like, I wonder sometimes if I should just get a Mac. And I said, what kind of Mac were you looking at? She's like, well, I would get like one of those big, like 17-inch MacBook Pros. And I said, yeah. I said, here's an idea. You could do that, absolutely. Spend $3,000 on a laptop, or you could buy 3 PCs, configure them all identically, put 2 of them in the closet, and the first time that your PC blue screen, just throw it away and pull out the second one. And I guarantee you that those 3 PCs will last longer than that Mac. For the same amount of money, you could just do that. And that's how much more expensive they are. But of course, to someone who has bought into the dream or is part of that religion, what I
Yeah.
just said is insanity.
Yeah.
And of course, it is insanity. I would never buy 3 PCs, but I mean, it's just, they're like, yeah, but it's so beautiful. Yeah.
It's
So's
pretty,
like a
yeah.
Mercedes, Roadster, but I can't afford one, so it doesn't really matter. You know, I think there's a big, I think a big
17
part of the,
inch 17-inch base model MacBook Pro, $2,500.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, you're gonna end up spending almost $3,000 on the device.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
insane.
it's a little nutty.
Most of the cars I've owned cost less than that.
Unless when it's worth it, I do find the 13-inch model pretty good.
Okay, but the average selling
1,500.
price of a PC laptop is like $425.
$425. I know. That's a crazy
so
point.
I hear you, but
It's a
I don't
premium
know.
device, Paul.
Nothing's perfect, right?
Premium device.
Yeah.
You could always go with Linux. No, it is a. You know
Nothing
what?
runs Linux. Like
Nothing.
PowerPC Mac.
Yeah.
Yellow Dog Linux.
Have you? I
remember
mean,
it
you've
well.
said a couple times that you've taken something back that you've said about a product and you've gotten torn apart over that because you were honest about it and you said, you know what, I kind of changed my mind. I kind of like it now.
I just think that that's how mature people act. Given more information, it's possible your opinions will change. That's normal. I had a very knee-jerk reaction to the iPad for a variety of reasons. I mean, I'm not trying to excuse myself per se, but I would just remind people that in the PC industry, we did the tablet thing a long time ago.
Hmm.
And I also have a kind of a pet peeve about the, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail approach to things. And Apple clearly was not making any headway in the PC market, but had made great headway in MP3 players and in phones.
I mean, they're
And
still not
so
making great headway in the PC market. I mean, it's
no,
still
but
a
I mean,
small
in other words, when you
percentage.
think about like why would Apple make an iPad? Did Apple make an iPad because it saw the future of computing? No, it made an iPad because those things are successful for Apple. I mean, they may have well in the process invented the future of computing. I hand them that, but I mean, that wasn't the point of what they were doing at all. It was, look, we have this really successful ecosystem. Is there another type of device we could sell?
Yeah,
To
and listen,
people every single year, preferably.
and there was a
And
gap. There was a gap in the market,
by the way,
and they filled it.
by the way, I'd also point out to people, and by the way, you could have the most Apple-centric view of the world. If you do, you will have to acknowledge that what I'm about to say is true, and it is this. Apple has said, as Steve Jobs said, that they came up with the idea for the iPad first, before the iPhone, but that they went with the iPhone for some reason. They did the iPod Touch, and then eventually they went back to the iPad.
Okay.
Apple was a computer company. I mean, if Apple was so positive that they had the future of computing in their hands, why would they have skipped over it for years and years? They clearly saw the world was going in this different direction toward devices.
Well, the
iPad
ecosystem
really
is
just a follow-up to
yeah.
that.
Well, the
ecosystem.
iPad, in my opinion, is successful due to the ecosystem it's in, because
Yeah.
you're already connected to that Apple
Well,
experience,
it's
and
it's complex. I mean, this is something I tried to explain recently, where you can be very cynical and say, "Look, this thing's a giant iPod," and you sound like a jerk saying that, but there's truth to it. It is in fact a giant blown up iPod. Of course it is, but that's like saying, "I have answered your question, but I have not told you what you wanted to know." And what you want to know is, yes, it is a giant iPod, but suddenly with this bigger screen, these capabilities make more sense. I think I used this example recently where I could hand my son an iPod Touch and say, use this to answer email, to browse the web, and to post to Facebook.
yeah.
And you can do it. You can do it. But it's not great because the screen's tiny. Just by making the screen big, that stuff becomes much more interesting.
Yeah.
It just does. And it's a little thing. And it's the type of thing where, when you say it's just a bigger iPod Touch, the response to that is like, yeah, it is. That's what makes all the difference in the world. It's got a bigger screen. You know,
Yeah.
it sounds obvious in retrospect.
And it has 4G and
Well,
it's
no, it
Retina.
doesn't.
No, I think you're right about that. One thing I want to get to before we wrap it up, and actually I should talk about our sponsor, our new sponsor to the show, and that's Audible.com, and the I should not pull that up because the link is wrong. I have the wrong link there. We're going to be doing Audible picks of the week, and this week, Paul, your pick is Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm actually reading this one traditionally because it's a TV series. I want to say it's on HBO. I don't get HBO, but it came out on DVD and I think on iTunes very recently. And I grew up reading fantasy and science fiction, Tolkien, Asimov, kind of all the classics and everything. And I tend to be a little critical of the wannabe stuff that falls into this category, like Harry Potter or whatever. But when I hear about this cycle of books or this series of books, which is still ongoing, my first reaction is it sounds like a Tolkien ripoff. I don't know, but I was amazed by how many people told me how great it was,
Mm-hmm.
and then they made it into an amazingly faithful TV series, I think on HBO, which we watched and my wife watched too, and it's amazing. It's adult and it's brutal and there's lots of sex and stuff like that, but it's a weird thing to say. It's very realistic. I mean, it takes place in a kind of a fantasy, swords and sorcery kind of thing, but it's closer to historical fiction than it is to pure fantasy. The book is fantastic. The book is even better, and the book expands on a lot of the storylines and the characters and all that stuff, which is exactly what you want to see.
No, I actually books like that on Audible I really enjoy because it's like it's not like some guy just sitting there reading it. It's not just a plain text thing.
There's an interesting entry point or entryway into good books from movies that can work really well. It doesn't always work. But if done correctly, the movie will encapsulate, or in this case, the TV series, enough of the book that if you like it and you want to know more, the book is, obviously the next step.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of that. This is a fantastic book, and I definitely I just am finishing it now, and I'll definitely read the rest of them. It's amazing to me how good this is.
Actually my pick this week, and before I tell you my pick, I just want to let everybody know, if you go to audibletrial.com/GFQ, you get a 30-day trial, and you get one free audiobook. And it's a great way to get started. They have over 100,000 titles to choose from. It works on Android, iPhone, iPad, and very soon to Windows Phone, correct? Paul?
Sorry, I lost what you just said.
I said very soon to Windows Phone.
I heard compute. You said very soon, blah, blah, computer voice. Sorry.
To Windows Phone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought you were trying to hint at something.
I'm sorry. I it's like coming soon to garble. I'm sorry. Yeah. In fact, somebody has been nice enough to provide me with copies of this application, which is fantastic, and it's been updated twice actually already since I posted my screenshot. So I would assume this spring is it. It looks like it's right there.
Actually, my pick this week for the Audible pick is The Hunger Games, because the movie just got released. My wife is reading the book, and she really enjoyed the book, so I got her the audiobook, and she's been listening to the audiobook, and she's really enjoying it. And there's 3 in the series, apparently. There's Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and I think Mockingjay. I think that's the final one. And it's all on Audible, so you could, get one for free, and if you like it, you continue your subscription, and you could get the other 2 in the coming months. That's audibletrial.com/GFQ. Get your free 30-day trial at Audible. Thank you. That was mine. I'm thanking myself at this point. Thank you, Audible. I do want to talk on one last topic, and then we're going to wrap it up for the day, and that is the recent strange thing going on with a lot of employers requiring your Facebook or your Twitter passwords before you get hired at a job or to keep your job. I find this very bizarre.
I can't imagine it's legal or legally defensible anyway.
I mean, I'll give you one example. I have a friend that just got hired at a very large company, and they required a Facebook login to see what they're doing. I cannot imagine, and apparently this goes on more than we think. It's happening a lot more than we think it's happening. I can't imagine how that's legal in any possible way.
Yeah, it's kind of a gray area in a way, because I suppose as long as they're not asking you to break the law, I'm sure within a privately held company, they could have certain requirements and so forth, as long as they are not breaking the law as well, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I not allowing Facebook or Twitter at work, okay, that makes sense.
I could understand that. Yeah.
But this is a horrible invasion into someone's private life. I don't agree with this at all.
I guess first of all, I don't know why they would want it. That why would an employer want your Facebook login? I mean, that seems like it's almost like this sick fetish of sorts.
Can you imagine if someone posted something to your account that was like some positive thing about work, or deleted something that they felt was
inappropriate in any way,
morally inappropriate or whatever. Yeah, or called you to the carpet and said, "Look, you shared this exchange with someone privately over Facebook, and we feel it doesn't uphold our values, and this is your first warning. But if it happens again, you're fired." I mean, really? Is that any different than them installing a listening device in your home? That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you one example. A high school student in Indiana was recently expelled for using the F word while sending out a tweet, and the school now has stated that they will. I think they're looking into requiring monitoring every student's Twitter. I mean, these are nutty.
That's a little different. I mean, Twitter occurs publicly, right? I mean, so that one, and with students in particular, I think you can make the argument that most of these people are minors and that they don't really have the same rights, and that there are obviously concerns in a school around security or bullying or whatever it might be. Tracking students on Twitter, that one I can kind of see.
But I mean, and this is I'm going to play the other side. Doesn't the
Yep.
school have larger, bigger issues at hand than
you know,
spending the time, the resources to track students' tweets and to see what they're doing outside of school? I mean, I would think that that's the parents' job to see what they're tweeting and what they're doing online. But for the school to actually
Yeah.
spend the time and the resource and to be,
Well,
it's
but
a
that
little
might
weird.
be where bullying is occurring now, right?
Yeah.
Very naturally, people move on to to that as the platform for whatever it is they're going to be doing, whether it's good or bad.
I think we're taking the social networking thing a little too serious. I think that's what's happened. Someone in a chat said employers are probably looking to get information that they otherwise couldn't, like age, pregnancy, to find out your personal information that they can't ask you during a job interview.
Yeah, I see you had this medical test. That's disconcerting and possibly expensive for us down the road. But see, that to me, that is in fact illegal right there. I mean, but that would be not the reason they would use when they didn't hire you. of
Yeah,
course.
they would tell you something else. But I'm just amazed that
Yeah.
this is happening. That people, I'm just thinking, if I went for a job interview and the employer said, "Listen, we're going to hire you. Just write down your Facebook username and password, and we're just going to go in there and just look around."
Well, okay. So I think this might be an example of technology outpacing things, right? So
Sure.
social networking has exploded. Perhaps in the future, when you go to get a job, and maybe 10 years down the road, you fill out these forms, right? When you get a job, you promise to do certain things. And one of those things, depending on the company, if you work like at a financial services firm or bank or something, or the government, certainly, you're probably not allowed to criticize the company publicly.
Sure.
I would imagine that's a part of an employment agreement a lot of people have signed. So maybe in the future that this thing is more granular, where as part of the, it's like when you get a loan, you give them permission to go look at your credit history. You apply for a job and you give them permission to go look at your Facebook history. And it would be the public Facebook stuff. It would be the Facebook, not the private messages you exchange with a friend that no one else would see.
Go to. Here's my Facebook page. Facebook.com/Andrew Zarian. Here, look, you can see that. I guess that's what you mean. That's what they would be able to do.
I can't see what you're showing because I don't see your
No,
video.
I'm just saying, like, anybody could go just Google, just
Well,
put
not
it into
anybody.
URL.
No, I mean, actually, so in this case, I think there are levels of sharing on Facebook, right? So there are private messages. You and I might exchange something that, I don't know what they call them, messages. It's like an email. That should never be shared with anybody. But anything you posted to your wall or whatever, regardless of its exposure, perhaps you could picture in the future them having access to that to just do a pass and make sure that there isn't anything there that concerns them. I mean, it's fairly legitimate for them to want to do this. It's just that I think the way they're doing it now is this is just dubious at best.
I would imagine this is the equivalent of someone in the 1960s saying, "Okay, listen, I'm going to hire you, but I first have to come to your house on a Friday night and go through all the mail you got last week, and then I'll hire you."
Sure.
I think that's the equivalent of it in some sense. I just find it nutty. I think we're getting way too wrapped up in people's personal lives. I think this is the strange thing, and Facebook and people. I think people are responsible for this. We have kind of made it okay for people to know everything that we're doing because we post everything that we're doing on these services.
Well, but I'm sorry, but if you did that, that's your fault.
And I look at it in that way too. People complain about. There's two types of privacy arguments. One is, I personally don't feel that it's okay for everything that I do on the internet to be traced in some sense, even though I kind of know that it is kind of being traced. There's some sort of link back to me in any possible way because everything is backward, traceable. It's your IP, and everybody knows what the IP is. But if it's going to a website, I really don't feel comfortable all my information being sold off. If it's Facebook, if it's my responsibility,
it's not a reasonable expectation.
No, I think most people agree with that. I think everybody would agree
but if
that.
you put stuff on a public timeline on Facebook,
and then you start screaming
or on
that
Twitter, I'm sorry. Oh, I got so drunk last night. I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. That's a mistake. You need to expect that people are going to see that. That's
Listen,
stupid.
yesterday I tweeted that I got loaded. I got loaded while drinking wine, and I used my iPad as a coaster. I knew what I was doing.
Right.
I
I was proud of that.
You were proud of that tweet. You were very proud.
Yeah,
You're
that
like,
was
you know
good.
what? I like that one. That's a very good drunk tweet. But
It's a glass surface. It's good for liquid.
now I'm thinking, let's say I get hired at a job and they look at my Twitter, and that's the first thing that they see.
I know.
One may chuckle if he's a Microsoft
Yeah.
fan, and what if the guy? And here's a crazy assumption: what if the guy is a crazy Mac fan, and he finds that offensive? He's like, well, he's mocking me. He's mocking me because I have an Apple product. There you go. I'm done. Right? I'm not going to get hired.
Yeah, but look, if you stand in your backyard naked and hang the laundry, you have to expect people to look at you. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's not it's not private just because you're in your backyard. You're out in full view of the world. That's what Facebook and Twitter are.
Yeah, I think
You don't want people to see stuff like that. Don't put it there.
It's a teenage mentality. I think I told the story last week. I have a relative that, she'll post, I hate mom, I hate grandma, I hate this one on her Facebook. And then when she gets in trouble for writing that, she'll write a tweet saying, this is my private life. Why are you invading my privacy? You just posted this on a
Wow.
public website with
it's like,
750
everyone
million
can see
users.
this.
And that's what I kept on. I'm like, you do know that 750 million people use this service, right? And she's like, yeah, but it's mine. It's my Facebook. I'm like, okay. You're going to get far in life. That's all I have to say.
Well, you're either going to grow up or you're not. I mean,
But the sad thing is a lot of people still have that mindset. I know so many people that are my age, we're approaching 30 at this point, and these are people I knew in high school. They post every bit of detail about their personal lives on Facebook, and it's such ridiculously private things that are happening to them.
well, but
I
it's-
can't
it's so
imagine
new. I mean,
people doing this.
This is the first generation. I can't fault them for it. I would have made the same stupid mistakes if this stuff was available.
But these are things that I wouldn't tell, I don't know, let's say, I wouldn't
Yeah.
speak about in public. And that's how I
Sure.
perceive Facebook and all these sites. I perceive it as a public conversation. So if I'm standing, if I'm on the subway and I'm really loud and it's really quiet, whatever I don't want out there, I'm not going to say it.
But I think you understand the technology better than some people.
I guess some people don't. Some people just think, it's me and my friends, and I could just talk about whatever I want.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be too hard to configure it so that would be the case. I just don't think they understand it. And I'm not blaming Facebook exactly, although Facebook does make it kind of hard, frankly, for that stuff.
I don't blame them at all with this. I don't. And when people
Yeah,
are screaming that, well, that was people are saying that certain photos get cached and they're in the system.
Right.
Don't put up. If I post whatever I post on the internet, no matter if it's Facebook or my website or wherever, I imagine that to be the most public thing in the world. And if I don't want it up, I'm not going to post it.
Right.
Everything is going to be found. Everything. So that's how we have to look at the internet. Is everything is traceable, and don't do something you don't want to do or you don't want people to see that you've done. And with that said, I don't want to continue doing the show, so therefore I will end it for the day.
Wait, you mean other people hear this?
Yeah, Paul. There's a bunch of people watching. About 5,000 people watched.
If only I could do this differently.
Yeah. Only if there was
If only
a
there
service.
was some way.
If only there was some way that I could just call you and it'll just be me and you.
Yeah. Exactly. Why don't they have that?
I don't know.
We'll get there.
I don't know. Hopefully one day in the future. This is the first generation of the product. Maybe one day there'll be a way that we could only talk to each other. Go to our website, gfqnetwork.com, if you miss any portion of the show, or you could go to our website, gfqlive.tv, to watch live. We broadcast live every day, and we have a full schedule on our website. Check out Paul's site, winsupersite.com, for all things Paul Thurrott, all things Microsoft, and all of his blogs, actually, at winsupersite.com. Paul also does a great podcast each and every Thursday on the Twit Network, Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley, and Leah Laporte. This week you're on at 2, right? 2 o'clock.
This week we're actually on Friday because I'm flying home on Thursday.
Friday. And anything else, Paul? Oh yeah, you have an app. You have an iPhone app. And
I do have an iPhone.
Just put in Paul Thurrott. You can
Listen,
find
everybody.
it. I don't have an iPhone app actually.
You should.
I don't have an iPhone.
Dimitri, right? We could get you an iPhone app.
Did Dimitri
Oh no,
make
he
it?
makes Windows Phone.
He
apps.
makes Windows Phone apps. Yeah, Dimitri's a cool guy. Really good apps too. I should talk to Dimitri. Maybe we get a Windows Phone app. And until next time, we'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.